Question 1. During the negotiation of a critical procurement agreement, the project manager finds that the vendor's proposed terms significantly deviate from the project's budget constraints, and the vendor is unwilling to compromise on price. The project manager has a clear understanding of the project's best alternative to a negotiated agreement, BATNA. What is the primary purpose of knowing the BATNA in this scenario? A. To identify the maximum concession the project manager can offer. B. To determine the minimum acceptable outcome before walking away from the negotiation. C. To force the vendor into accepting the project's original terms. D. To predict the vendor's lowest possible offer during the negotiation. Answer: B. To determine the minimum acceptable outcome before walking away from the negotiation. The best alternative to a negotiated agreement, BATNA, serves as a crucial benchmark, defining the least favorable outcome a project manager is willing to accept before choosing an alternative course of action. It acts as a safety net, providing a clear boundary for when it is no longer advantageous to continue the current negotiation. For instance, if the project manager knows a reliable alternative supplier can provide the same service at a certain cost, this sets the upper limit for what they would pay the current vendor. Understanding your BATNA empowers you to walk away from a bad deal and pursue a more favorable option, ensuring the project's interests are protected. Always prepare your BATNA before entering any significant negotiation. Question 2. A project manager is tasked with establishing an agreement for a new software development project where the scope is not fully defined but requirements will evolve throughout the project lifecycle. Which type of contract would be most suitable for this situation, promoting flexibility and collaboration? A. Fixed price contract. B. Time and materials, T&M, contract. C. Firm fixed price, FFP, contract. D. Lump sum contract. Answer: B. Time and materials, T&M, contract. A time and materials, T&M, contract is best suited for projects where the scope is not fully defined or is expected to evolve, such as in Agile software development. This contract type compensates the seller for the actual time spent and materials used, allowing flexibility for changing requirements without needing constant contract amendments for every scope adjustment. Unlike fixed-price contracts which require a clear, stable scope upfront, T&M contracts share some risk with the buyer by making them responsible for actual costs while still providing a cap on the total price if desired. Remember that T&M contracts typically require vigilant oversight to manage costs effectively. Question 3. During the negotiation of a service agreement, the project manager notices that the seller's representatives are primarily focused on short-term gains, while the project's objective is to build a long-term strategic partnership. Which negotiation strategy should the project manager emphasize to align both parties' interests for future collaboration? A. Distributive negotiation. B. Win-lose negotiation. C. Integrative negotiation. D. Adversarial negotiation. Answer: C. Integrative negotiation. Integrative negotiation, often referred to as win-win negotiation, is the ideal strategy when both parties aim to build a long-term relationship and find mutually beneficial solutions. This approach focuses on understanding underlying interests rather than just positions, seeking to expand the pie of resources rather than just dividing it. By emphasizing shared goals and potential future collaborations, the project manager can shift the focus from short-term individual gains to solutions that create value for both the project and the seller. Always strive for integrative negotiation when a relationship is important. Question 4. A project manager is preparing to negotiate a contract with a new vendor for a specialized component. Which of the following is the most important step to perform during the preparation stage of negotiation? A. Brainstorming possible concessions the vendor might offer. B. Establishing the project's bottom line and BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. C. Drafting the final contract clauses to be presented. D. Identifying potential conflicts of interest among the negotiation team members. Answer B. Establishing the project's bottom line and BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. During the preparation stage of negotiation, a critical step is to clearly define the project's non-negotiable bottom line and to establish the best alternative to a negotiated agreement, BATNA. The bottom line represents the minimum acceptable terms, while the BATNA is what the project team will do if a satisfactory agreement cannot be reached with the current party. For example, knowing you have another viable supplier ready to step in provides significant leverage and confidence during discussions. Thorough preparation, including a clear BATNA, prevents agreeing to terms that are worse than walking away. Question 5. A project manager is negotiating with a functional manager for the allocation of critical resources for an upcoming project. The functional manager is hesitant due to existing commitments. What is the most effective approach for the project manager to secure the necessary resources? A. Demand the resources, citing project priority. B. Offer to compensate the functional manager with budget from the project. C. Understand the functional manager's constraints and explore mutual benefits or alternative solutions. D. Escalate the issue immediately to senior management. Answer C. Understand the functional manager's constraints and explore mutual benefits or alternative solutions. The most effective approach in internal negotiations for resources is to adopt a collaborative, problem-solving mindset, focusing on understanding the other party's perspective and constraints. By actively listening to the functional manager's concerns, the project manager can identify potential trade-offs, offer support, or propose solutions that benefit both the project and the functional department, such as sharing resources or adjusting timelines. For example, proposing a flexible resource schedule might alleviate the functional manager's burden while still meeting project needs. Building strong internal relationships through collaboration often leads to more successful outcomes than demands or immediate escalation. Question 6. The project team has identified several risks associated with a new technology that a potential vendor proposes to use. During contract negotiations, the project manager wants to ensure these risks are appropriately managed and shared. Which contract element is crucial for addressing such uncertainties? A. Payment terms. B. Statement of work, SOW. C. Risk management clauses. D. Performance metrics. Answer C. Risk management clauses. Risk management clauses are crucial elements within a contract that define how potential uncertainties and their impacts will be addressed, allocated, and managed between the contracting parties. These clauses can specify responsibilities for identification, analysis, response planning, and monitoring of risks, ensuring that both the buyer and seller understand their roles in mitigating unforeseen issues. For instance, a clause might define who bears the cost if a new technology fails or if a regulatory change impacts the project's scope. Including clear risk management provisions helps protect both parties and provides a framework for handling problems should they arise. Question 7. A project manager is reviewing a proposed contract for a deliverable, and the terms specify that payment will be made only upon the final acceptance of the entire completed deliverable. This type of payment structure carries the highest risk for the seller. What kind of contract is most likely being proposed? A. Cost plus award fee, CPIF. B. Time and materials, T&M. C. Firm fixed price, FFP. D. Cost plus fixed fee, CPIF. Answer C. Firm fixed price, FFP. A firm fixed price, FFP, contract is one where the price is set at the outset and is not subject to adjustment unless the scope changes. This means the seller assumes the majority of the cost risk, as they are obligated to complete the work for the agreed-upon price, regardless of their actual costs. For example, if a software development project is agreed upon for $100,000, the vendor receives $100,000 even if their costs balloon to $120,000. This contract type requires a very well-defined scope from the buyer's perspective but offers the highest certainty of cost. Question 8. In an Agile project, the project team is negotiating with a vendor for specific functionality to be developed. The team wants to ensure flexibility and the ability to adapt to changing requirements while maintaining some cost control. Which contracting approach would best support these Agile principles? A. Fixed price per deliverable. B. Time and materials with an agreed-upon not-to-exceed clause. C. Firm fixed price for the entire product. D. Cost reimbursable with no incentives. Answer: B. Time and materials with an agreed-upon not-to-exceed clause. For Agile projects, a time and materials (T&M) contract with a not-to-exceed clause offers a beneficial balance between flexibility and cost control. This approach allows the team to adapt requirements and scope as needed throughout iterative development, aligning with Agile principles, while the not-to-exceed clause caps the total financial exposure for the buyer. For instance, the vendor charges for hours worked and materials, but the total bill cannot exceed a predefined maximum, providing some budget predictability. This structure encourages collaboration and shared understanding, which are crucial for successful Agile engagements. Question 9. A project manager is conducting negotiations for a highly complex project with significant unknowns. The potential vendor has extensive expertise in this area but is reluctant to commit to a fixed price due to the high degree of uncertainty. Which type of cost reimbursable contract offers the vendor the most incentive to perform well while sharing some risk with the buyer? A. Cost plus fixed fee, CPIF. B. Cost plus percentage of cost, CPPC. C. Cost plus incentive fee, CPIF. D. Time and materials, T&M. Answer: C. Cost plus incentive fee, CPIF. A cost plus incentive fee, CPIF, contract is a cost reimbursable contract type that provides a seller with a predetermined incentive fee based on achieving specific performance targets, such as cost, schedule, or technical performance. This structure encourages the vendor to control costs and perform efficiently, as they receive a higher fee if actual costs are below target costs and a lower fee if they exceed them, up to a ceiling. For example, if the target cost is $1 million and the vendor completes the work for $900,000, they share the savings with the buyer, receiving a bonus fee in addition to their base fee. CPIF effectively balances risk between buyer and seller while motivating strong performance. Question 10. During contract negotiations, the project manager discovers a significant discrepancy between the project's requirements and the vendor's proposed solution. What is the most important action for the project manager to take next? A. Immediately reject the proposal and seek new vendors. B. Document the discrepancy and continue negotiating on other terms. C. Seek clarification from the vendor and attempt to bridge the gap through discussion. D. Escalate the issue to the project sponsor for a decision. Answer: C. Seek clarification from the vendor and attempt to bridge the gap through discussion. When a significant discrepancy arises between project requirements and a vendor's proposal, the most important initial step is to engage in open communication to seek clarification and understand the root cause of the difference. This involves actively listening to the vendor's perspective and explaining the project's needs in detail, allowing both parties to collaboratively explore potential solutions or compromises. For example, the vendor might have misunderstood a requirement, or the project team might be unaware of a more efficient alternative. Rushing to judgment or immediate escalation can prematurely terminate a potentially valuable relationship. Question 11. A project manager is leading negotiations for a large infrastructure project. The legal team has advised that certain clauses within the proposed contract need to be extremely precise to avoid future disputes and ensure compliance with international law. Which characteristic of agreements is most emphasized in this situation? A. Flexibility. B. Clarity. C. Conciseness. D. Speed. Answer: B. Clarity. In complex projects, especially those involving legal implications or international contexts, clarity in agreements is paramount. Clarity ensures that all parties have an unambiguous understanding of their rights, obligations, deliverables, and terms, minimizing the potential for misinterpretation and future disputes. Precise language, unambiguous definitions, and detailed specifications contribute to a clear agreement. For instance, clearly defining what constitutes project completion prevents disagreements at the project's end. Always strive for utmost clarity in all project agreements to protect all parties. Question 12. A project manager has just completed negotiating a complex service agreement. What should be the very next step after verbally agreeing on all terms and conditions? A. Begin immediate work on the project. B. Conduct a lessons learned session on the negotiation process. C. Get the agreement documented and formally signed by all parties. D. Announce the successful negotiation to all stakeholders. Answer: C. Get the agreement documented and formally signed by all parties. After verbally agreeing on all terms and conditions, the most crucial next step is to ensure that the agreement is thoroughly documented and formally signed by all authorized parties. A verbal agreement, while a step, is generally not legally binding or enforceable without written documentation, especially for significant project contracts. This formalization ensures that all terms are captured accurately, prevents misunderstandings, and provides a legally enforceable record of the commitments made. For example, without a signed contract, either party could later deny specific terms or even the existence of the agreement. A signed agreement is the foundation for moving forward securely. Question 13. A project manager is negotiating with a key stakeholder who has significant influence over the project's success. The stakeholder has strong opinions that differ from the project team's proposed approach. Which interpersonal and team skill is most important for the project manager to effectively manage this negotiation? A. Command and control. B. Unilateral decision-making. C. Active listening and empathy. D. Forceful persuasion. Answer: C. Active listening and empathy. In negotiations, especially with influential stakeholders, active listening and empathy are crucial interpersonal skills. Active listening means fully concentrating on what the other person is saying, both verbally and non-verbally, to truly understand their concerns, interests, and underlying motivations. Empathy involves understanding and sharing the feelings of another. By demonstrating these skills, the project manager can build rapport, identify common ground, address unspoken concerns, and ultimately find mutually acceptable solutions that respect the stakeholders' perspective while advancing project goals. For example, instead of dismissing a stakeholder's concern about risk, an empathetic project manager would listen, acknowledge the validity, and then propose a mitigation strategy. Question 14. A project manager is conducting negotiations with a vendor for a new software system. The vendor is insisting on a payment schedule that requires a large upfront payment, which conflicts with the project's cash flow plan. The project manager needs to find a solution that satisfies both parties. This situation primarily calls for the project manager to demonstrate which negotiation technique? A. Threatening to walk away from the deal. B. Refusing any concessions. C. Seeking a compromise or creative solution. D. Demanding the vendor conform to the project's terms. Answer: C. Seeking a compromise or creative solution. When faced with conflicting requirements, such as differing payment terms, the project manager should primarily employ negotiation techniques that seek compromise or creative solutions. This involves exploring various options, perhaps a phased payment schedule, smaller initial payment with performance-based milestones, or linking payment to specific deliverable acceptance. The goal is to find common ground that partially satisfies both parties' interests, ensuring the project can proceed while accommodating the vendor's needs. For instance, proposing a smaller upfront payment followed by significant payments upon critical milestone completion could be a win-win. Flexibility and problem-solving are key in reaching a mutually beneficial agreement. Question 15. The project manager has identified a potential vendor who can provide the required services at a very competitive price, but they have a reputation for poor communication and occasional delays. During negotiations, which aspect of the agreement should the project manager prioritize to mitigate these potential issues? A. Warranties and guarantees. B. Payment terms. C. Communication plan and performance metrics. D. Force majeure clauses. Answer: C. Communication plan and performance metrics. To mitigate issues arising from a vendor's reputation for poor communication and delays, the project manager should prioritize establishing clear communication protocols and robust performance metrics within the agreement. This includes defining reporting requirements, meeting cadences, escalation paths, and specific, measurable indicators for timeliness and quality of deliverables. For example, including a clause that specifies weekly progress reports, immediate notification of delays, and penalties for missed deadlines helps hold the vendor accountable and provides a framework for managing potential issues proactively. Clear expectations and accountability mechanisms are crucial for successful vendor relationships. Question 16. A project manager is reviewing an existing contract with a supplier. The project's requirements have changed, necessitating a modification to the agreed scope of work. What document is used to formalize this change to the original agreement? A. A new contract. B. A change order or contract amendment. C. A memorandum of understanding, MOU. D. A purchase requisition. Answer: B. A change order or contract amendment. When changes occur to an existing project agreement or contract, a formal change order or contract amendment is the document used to modify the original terms and conditions. This ensures that any alterations to scope, schedule, cost, or other contractual elements are legally documented and agreed upon by both parties, maintaining the integrity of the original agreement. For example, if a client requests an additional feature in a software project, a change order would specify the new work, its cost, and any impact on the timeline. Always ensure all changes to contracts are formally documented and approved to avoid disputes. Question 17. The project manager is preparing for a procurement negotiation with a vendor who has supplied similar services to the organization before. To leverage past experiences and avoid repeating mistakes, what specific information should the project manager review from previous projects? A. The vendor's financial reports. B. Competitor pricing strategies. C. Lessons learned from past procurements and vendor performance records. D. General market trends for the services. Answer: C. Lessons learned from past procurements and vendor performance records. When preparing for a negotiation with a known vendor, reviewing lessons learned from past procurements and historical vendor performance records is critical. This information provides valuable insights into what worked well, what challenges arose, and how the vendor performed against previous agreements, example timeliness, quality, responsiveness to issues. For instance, if past records show consistent delays from this vendor, the project manager can proactively negotiate specific penalties for lateness or stricter reporting requirements. Leveraging this historical data helps refine negotiation strategies and build more robust agreements for the current project. Question 18. A project manager is struggling to reach an agreement with a vendor due to differing interpretations of certain technical specifications. Both parties are firm in their positions. What conflict resolution technique is most appropriate to help resolve this impasse while maintaining a good working relationship? A. Forcing. B. Compromising. C. Accommodating. D. Smoothing. Answer: B. Compromising. When both parties are firm in their positions and a resolution is needed to move forward while preserving the relationship, compromising is often the most appropriate conflict resolution technique. Compromising involves each party giving up something to reach a mutually acceptable agreement. For example, if the project manager wants a higher specification and the vendor wants a lower one, a compromise might be to select a mid-range specification that partially satisfies both interests. While not a win-win, it allows progress, demonstrates willingness to collaborate, and helps maintain a positive working relationship. Question 19. During negotiations, a project manager is focused on ensuring that the final agreement accurately reflects all requirements, deliverables, and acceptance criteria. Which project management process group is this activity most closely aligned with? A. Initiating. B. Planning. C. Executing. D. Monitoring and controlling. Answer: B. Planning. Negotiating project agreements, particularly those related to procurement and defining the scope of work, is most closely aligned with the planning process group. During planning, the project team develops the procurement management plan, conducts make-or-buy analyses, prepares procurement documentation, and then performs the actual procurement, including negotiations. This involves defining how the work will be done, by whom, and under what terms, ensuring that the agreement directly supports the project's objectives. For example, clearly outlining deliverables and acceptance criteria in the contract occurs during the detailed planning phase to set expectations before execution begins. Question 20. A project manager needs to procure specialized equipment for a project. The market has only a few qualified suppliers, giving them significant bargaining power. To reduce the risk of inflated prices, what should the project manager focus on during pre-negotiation preparation? A. Developing a robust make-or-buy analysis to explore internal production. B. Solely relying on the lowest bid received. C. Emphasizing the project's tight budget constraints without offering alternatives. D. Accepting the first offer made by any supplier. Answer: A. Developing a robust make-or-buy analysis to explore internal production. In a market with limited suppliers and high bargaining power, a project manager should conduct a robust make-or-buy analysis during the pre-negotiation preparation. This analysis assesses whether it's more cost-effective or strategically beneficial to produce the equipment internally rather than procuring it externally. For example, if the analysis shows that internal production is feasible, it strengthens the project manager's negotiation position by providing a strong alternative to the external suppliers, reducing their leverage. This preparation is key to ensuring the project obtains the best value and mitigates the risks associated with a non-competitive market. Question 21. When negotiating an Agile contract, what is a key focus for the project manager to ensure the agreement supports iterative development and changing requirements? A. Strict adherence to a fixed scope and detailed upfront specifications. B. Emphasizing fixed-price deliverables for each increment. C. Focusing on value delivery, flexible scope, and collaborative working arrangements. D. minimizing vendor interaction to maintain control over the project. Answer C. Focusing on value delivery, flexible scope, and collaborative working arrangements. In Agile contracting, the primary focus is on promoting flexibility, iterative development, and continuous value delivery, rather than rigid upfront specifications. This means the project manager should emphasize defining value, allowing for scope flexibility based on feedback, and establishing collaborative working arrangements that encourage open communication and shared problem-solving. For instance, instead of fixed deliverables, the contract might specify a budget for a certain period, with the understanding that the features delivered will be prioritized and adapted as the project progresses. This approach supports the Agile principles of responding to change over following a plan. Question 22. A project manager is conducting a negotiation that involves multiple internal departments, each with competing interests. The project manager needs to ensure that the final agreement serves the overall organizational strategic objectives. What is the most important consideration in this scenario? A. Satisfying the demands of the most influential department. B. Reaching a consensus that aligns with the organization's overarching goals. C. Prioritizing the project's immediate needs over long-term organizational benefits. D. Documenting each department's individual preferences for future reference. Answer B. Reaching a consensus that aligns with the organization's overarching goals. In internal negotiations involving multiple departments with competing interests, the most important consideration is to facilitate a consensus that directly aligns with the organization's overarching strategic objectives. The project manager's role is to act as a facilitator, guiding discussions towards solutions that prioritize the greater good of the organization, even if it means some departments don't get everything they initially requested. For example, if one department wants a faster delivery but another needs higher quality, the negotiation should aim for a balance that best serves the company's strategic priorities. Focusing on organizational goals ensures long-term success beyond individual project or departmental interests. Question 23. During contract negotiations for a new IT system, the vendor proposes a clause that limits their liability significantly in case of system failure. The project manager believes this introduces an unacceptable level of risk to the project. What is the best immediate course of action for the project manager? A. Accept the clause and look for internal mitigation strategies. B. Immediately terminate negotiations with this vendor. C. Present the concern and propose a revised liability clause that balances risk. D. Consult with the project sponsor to accept the risk. Answer C. Present the concern and propose a revised liability clause that balances risk. When a vendor proposes terms that introduce unacceptable risk, such as a severe limitation of liability, the project manager's best immediate course of action is to directly address the concern and propose alternative language or a revised clause. This involves clearly articulating the project's risk tolerance and why the proposed clause is problematic, then collaboratively seeking a more balanced approach that distributes risk fairly between both parties. For example, they might propose a cap on liability that is higher than the vendor's initial offer but still reasonable, or tie liability to specific performance metrics. Negotiation is about finding mutually acceptable ground, not immediately accepting or rejecting proposals. Question 24. A project manager is leading a negotiation where the other party seems to be stalling and avoiding making concrete commitments. Which negotiation technique should the project manager apply to move the negotiation forward effectively? A. Reciprocation, offer a small concession to encourage a return. B. Scarcity, imply that the opportunity might be withdrawn soon. C. Active listening and asking open-ended questions to uncover underlying concerns. D. Escalation, threaten to involve higher management. Answer C. active listening and asking open-ended questions to uncover underlying concerns. When a party is stalling or avoiding commitments, the most effective negotiation technique is to use active listening and ask open-ended questions to uncover their underlying concerns or reasons for hesitation. Stalling often indicates unaddressed fears, unclear information, or hidden interests. By asking questions like, "What are your main reservations?" or "What would help you feel more comfortable moving forward?" the project manager can gain valuable insight into the actual barriers to agreement. This approach builds trust and helps identify potential solutions, enabling the negotiation to progress constructively. Question 25. The project manager needs to establish an agreement for recurring operational support services that are critical for the post-implementation phase of a project. The services are well-defined and expected to be stable over time. Which type of agreement is typically best suited for long-term, stable service provision? A. Letter of intent, LOI. B. Service level agreement, SLA. C. Memorandum of understanding, MOU. D. Purchase order, PO. Answer: B. Service level agreement, SLA. A service level agreement, SLA, is the most appropriate type of agreement for defining and managing recurring operational support services, particularly when those services are well-defined and expected to be stable over time. An SLA clearly outlines the specific services to be provided, performance targets, example uptime, response times, responsibilities of both parties, and consequences for failing to meet the agreed-upon levels. For example, an SLA might specify that IT support will respond to critical issues within 1 hour. This formalizes expectations, ensures accountability, and provides a framework for ongoing service quality monitoring.